The sun was beginning to sink over the Manila skyline, its fading light washing the slums in shades of gold and gray. Tin roofs shimmered like broken mirrors, children ran barefoot through narrow alleys, and the scent of fried fish and smoke hung thick in the humid air. Amid the noise of tricycles and vendors calling out their wares, one sound rose above the chaos: the gentle strumming of a guitar. It came from a boy sitting on the edge of a cracked concrete step, just outside a makeshift home patched together from wood, tarpaulin, and old political posters. His name was Raphael, 13 years old, thin as a bamboo stick, with eyes that carried both innocence and a kind of quiet fire. His shirt was torn, his slippers mismatched, but his hands played the guitar as if they belonged to an angle. The guitar itself looked like it had seen better days. Its body scratched and faded, one corner bound together with duct tape, and a few strings replaced with wire taken from an old bicycle brake. But when Raphael played, the instrument seemed to come alive, as though his music breathed new life into the broken wood. He sang softly at first, a melody of longing that drifted into the evening air. When life is hard and dreams are small, I still believe I can stand tall. His voice wasn't perfect, it cracked at times. But there was something in it that made people stop. A street vendor paused his shouting, a group of kids fell quiet, and an old woman sitting nearby wiped her eyes. Raphael wasn't singing for attention, he sang because it was all he knew to do. Every day after school, if he managed to go that day, Raphael came to this same spot to play. He didn't have a real audience, just passersby who sometimes dropped a few coins into the rusty tin can beside him. On lucky days he earned enough to buy rice for dinner. On others he went to sleep with an empty stomach, his fingers still tingling from the strings. Inside their little shack, his mother, Aling Maria, sat sorting through vegetables she hadn't sold at the market. Her hands were rough, her back bent from years of labor, but her eyes followed her son with pride. "Anak," she would often say with a smile, "you have something special. God gave you that voice. Don't ever stop singing, even when life tries to silence you." But Raphael knew the truth. Life had already silenced so many around him. Kids who dropped out of school to sell candy, fathers who disappeared to find work abroad, mothers who cried quietly at night. He didn't want to be another story of what could have been, he wanted to be more. He remembered his father faintly, a tall man who once played guitar too. There were nights long ago when Raphael would fall asleep listening to his father hum lullabies. But then came the accident. His father, a construction worker, fell from scaffolding at a job site. He survived but couldn't work anymore. One day he left home promising to return with money. He never did. That old guitar was the only thing he left behind. Raphael kept it like a relic. Every dent, every scratch was a story. A memory of his father's calloused hands and the songs they used to share. He didn't play to become famous. He played to feel close to him again. That evening, as the wind carried the faint sounds of the city, Raphael closed his eyes and began to sing another song. One he had written himself. The lyrics spoke of dreams rising from the dust, of hope shining through brokenness. His voice trembled but didn't waver. A young tourist couple walking by slowed down, drawn by the melody. The woman whispered, "Listen, he sounds amazing." She took out her phone and began to record as Raphael sang with all the sincerity of a soul far older than his years. He didn't notice them. He was lost in the music, his eyes shut tight, his heart wide open. When the song ended, there was a moment of stillness. The woman clapped softly. "You're really good," she said. "What's your name?" Raphael looked up, surprised. "Raphael Poe," he replied shyly. She smiled. "Raphael, you have a gift. Don't ever stop singing." He nodded politely, not realizing that her short video, just 2 minutes long, would soon travel across oceans. As the couple walked away, Raphael packed up his guitar. The sky had turned purple, the streetlights flickering on one by one. He counted his coins, 26 pesos. Enough for rice, maybe a bit of fish. His mother would be happy. On his way home, he stopped by a small church at the corner of the street. The doors were open and candles flickered inside. He stepped in quietly, placed his guitar beside a pew and knelt. "Lord," he whispered, "thank you for today. I don't ask for much. Just please help me sing for as long as I can." A gentle breeze passed through the church, rustling the pages of a hymnal. Raphael smiled faintly, as if God had just answered. When he returned home, his mother greeted him with a warm hug. They ate their simple meal, rice and salt, and she asked, "Did anyone listen today?" Raphael grinned. "A few people, mama, and one lady took a video." She chuckled. "A video? Maybe one day you'll be on TV." He laughed, the kind of innocent laugh only a dreamer can have. "Maybe, mama, maybe." That night, after washing his face with cold water from a bucket, Raphael lay on the floor beside his mother, his guitar next to him like a best friend. Through the thin walls, he could hear the distant hum of the city, horns, laughter, shouting. But it all faded as sleep took him. Far away in another part of the world, the tourist uploaded the video to social media with the caption, "This boy from the streets of Manila just broke my heart with his voice." She didn't think much of it. But by morning, thousands of people would. For now Raphael slept soundly, unaware that his simple prayer, whispered into the quiet of a small church, was about to echo across the world. By dawn, Manila was already awake. Roasters crowded from rooftops, vendors shouted in the streets, and the scent of fried bananas filled the morning air. But inside one of the smallest houses in the slum, something extraordinary was happening. Though Raphael didn't yet know it, he was still fast asleep on the floor beside his mother, his arm curled protectively around his guitar. The old radio on the table crackled faintly with the morning news. Outside life went on as usual, tricycles honking, children running barefoot, the daily struggle repeating like a song stuck on the same verse. But thousands of miles away, on screens across the world, a miracle was unfolding. The video, "Poor Filipino Boy with a Broken Guitar Sings Like an Angel," had been uploaded just 8 hours earlier. By morning it already had over 1 million views. Comments flooded in from all corners of the world. "I can't stop crying. This kid's voice went straight to my heart. I don't know who he is, but someone please find this boy. He deserves the world. I hope he sees this." It was shared by celebrities, reposted by news outlets, and translated into multiple languages. Viewers from the US, UK, and beyond were moved to tears by the sight of a barefoot boy singing from the heart in the middle of the Manila slums. Meanwhile, Raphael was oblivious. He woke up, rubbed his sleepy eyes, and stretched. His mother handed him a cup of instant coffee. "Anak," she said, "I had a dream. You were singing in a big place with lights and people clapping." Raphael chuckled. "Maybe one day, Mama. For now, I just sing for the streetlights." He didn't know that those same streetlights had already lit the path to something far greater. Later that morning, the woman who had filmed him, her name was Emily, a tourist from London, woke up to hundreds of notifications. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Reporters wanted to contact her. Music producers were asking, "Who is this boy? Can you connect us?" Emily couldn't believe it. "Oh my God," she whispered, scrolling through the comments. "This kid, people love him." She immediately messaged the local community center she had visited during her trip. "Please find Raphael, the boy with the guitar. The world is looking for him." By afternoon, the video had reached 10 million views. Radio stations in the Philippines were talking about it, and local news channels started searching the slums to find the mystery boy. When a reporter finally showed up at Raphael's alley, he was confused. The woman held up her phone and showed him the video. "This is you, right?" Raphael blinked.
Yes, ma'am," she smiled.
"Raphael, you're famous! The whole world has seen your video!" His mouth fell open. "Famous? But why?" "Because your song touched millions of hearts." Within hours, people crowded outside their small home. Neighbors cheered, and children pointed excitedly. "That's him. That's the boy from the video." Raphael's mother stood at the doorway, overwhelmed. "Is this real?" she whispered. The reporter nodded, smiling. "Very real, Mom. And it's just the beginning." Across the ocean. The moment that changed everything. That evening, in a sleek office in London, a television producer from Britain's Got Talent watched the viral video on his laptop. The sound was raw, the background chaotic, but the boy's voice cut through everything. It wasn't just talent, it was truth. He leaned back in his chair and muttered, "Simon needs to see this." Minutes later, the video played in front of Simon Cowell himself. Simon, known for his stern face and impossible standards, watched in silence. As the boy's song reached its emotional peak, Simon's expression softened. He turned to his team and said quietly, "Find him, bring him here." And so an official email was sent. The subject line read, "Invitation. Britain's Got Talent audition Raphael from the Philippines." The letter that changed their lives. 2 days later, a staff member from the community center walked up to Raphael's door, holding a white envelope. "Raphael," she said breathlessly, "you've been invited to perform in London." Raphael stared at the letter as if it were glowing. "London," he repeated, his voice trembling.
"Yes.
"On Britain's Got Talent, the real show. They want you." His mother clutched her chest, tears filling her eyes. "But how?" "We don't have money for tickets." The woman smiled. "Don't worry, a charity organization saw your story. They're covering everything. Passports, flights, hotel. You're going to London." Raphael. He looked down at his old guitar, the one held together by tape. His hands shook as he held the letter. "Mama, do you think Papa would be proud?" Aling Maria pulled him close, her voice breaking. "He's already proud, Anak. So proud." That night, they sat outside under the stars, the entire neighborhood buzzing with excitement. People came to congratulate them, offering food, hugs and blessings. For the first time Raphael saw his mother smile without worry. Still deep inside he felt nervous. "What if they laugh at me, Mama? What if I'm not good enough?" She took his face in her hands. "Raphael, listen to me. You've been singing from your heart since you were little. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be you." The journey begins the next morning. Raphael woke before dawn. The sky was painted in soft pinks and oranges, and for once the slum felt peaceful. His guitar was carefully wrapped in cloth, his few clothes folded into a small backpack. When they reached the airport, Raphael's eyes widened. He had never seen anything like it. The shining floors, the towering planes, the people from all over the world. He held his mother's hand tightly as they boarded the plane. As the engines roared and the plane lifted off the ground, he looked out the window, watching the slums shrink into tiny dots. His chest tightened. That small world below, the one that had given him pain, laughter, hunger, and hope, was where it all began. He whispered softly, "Thank you, Lord, for hearing me." His mother smiled through tears. "This is just the start, Anak. God has a big plan for you." Raphael nodded, his fingers tracing the body of his guitar. He didn't know what awaited him on the other side of the world. But he knew one thing: he would sing, not for fame, not for money, but for every child still dreaming in the dark corners of Manila. The plane soared higher into the clouds, leaving behind the city that once knew him as just another boy on the street. Now, he was flying toward a destiny no one could have imagined, not even him. And far below, in the alley where it all began, a group of children gathered around a small speaker, replaying the viral video once more. "That's Kuya Raphael!" one of them shouted proudly. "He's going to London," another yelled. Their laughter echoed through the streets, the same streets where, only days before, Raphael had sung alone. Now, the whole world was listening. The air inside the Britain's Got Talent studio buzzed with anticipation. Cameras rolled, stage lights shimmered like diamonds, and a sea of excited faces filled the grand auditorium. The judges Simon Cowell, Amanda Holden, Alicia Dixon and Bruno Tonioli sat behind the long table, chatting and smiling between auditions. Backstage, a small boy in a slightly oversized white shirt clutched his battered guitar like it was a lifeline. His hands trembled, his heart pounded in his chest, and his mother's gentle voice echoed beside him. "Anak, remember," she whispered in Filipino, "just sing like you always do, with your heart. No matter how big this place is, it's still just another street, and they're just people." Raphael nodded nervously. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was no longer the alleyway in Manila where he played for coins. This was one of the biggest stages in the world. The lights, the cameras, the crowd, everything felt enormous. A stagehand bent down with a smile. "You're up next, Raphael. Ready?" He nodded again, clutching his guitar so tightly his knuckles turned white. The massive curtains parted. As he stepped out, the audience murmured, some surprised to see such a young boy, barefoot in worn jeans, carrying an old, taped-up guitar. The contrast between him and the polished, flashy contestants before him was striking. Simon looked up from his papers, raising an eyebrow. "Hello there," he said. "What's your name?" Raphael swallowed hard. "My name is Raphael, sir. I came from the Philippines." The crowd let out a collective, "Aoo," and Amanda smiled warmly. "How old are you?" "Raphael, 13, he replied softly. Simon leaned forward. "And what are you going to sing for us today?" Raphael took a deep breath. "I will sing you Ray." Simon tilted his head. "Ah, a big song." His tone was half challenging, half curious. "Okay then, Raphael, the stage is yours." Raphael nodded. Then silence filled the hall. He looked at the lights above him, so bright they blurred his vision, and then at the sea of faces before him. For a second fear almost overtook him. His palms were sweaty, his throat was dry. But then, in that stillness, he remembered his mother's words, and the church where he had prayed before leaving Manila. He whispered under his breath, "For you, Lord, and for Mama." Then he began. The first few notes from his guitar were shaky, but the sound carried warmth. Then his voice, soft at first, broke through the silence like dawn breaking through darkness. "When I am down, and oh my soul so weary." The audience quieted instantly. Even Simon's expression softened, his pen slowly dropping from his hand. Raphael's voice, though young, was filled with something rare, sincerity. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't trained, but it was true. Every word carried the weight of nights spent singing under flickering streetlights. Every note the ache of a boy who had known both hunger and hope. The crowd leaned in. Some wiped their eyes. His mother stood offstage, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You raise me up so I can stand on mountains." His voice grew stronger, soaring across the auditorium. By the time he reached the chorus, it felt as though the entire hall was breathing with him. Even Simon's usual stern demeanor had melted away. He blinked rapidly, his jaw tightening, his eyes glistening with emotion. The final note hung in the air, pure, fragile and powerful. Then silence. It lasted only a heartbeat before the entire crowd erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, crying. The sound filled the room like thunder. Raphael froze, stunned. He looked around, unsure if it was real. Then he saw Simon stand up. Simon Cowell, the man famous for his brutal honesty, was standing. He pressed his hand against his chest and exhaled deeply before speaking. His voice was softer than anyone had ever heard it. "Raphael," Simon said, shaking his head slightly, "I've been doing this for a long time, and every once in a while, someone walks on this stage and reminds us why we started this show. You didn't just sing a song, you told us your story. You sang with your soul, and I'll be honest." He paused. "I wasn't expecting to cry today. The audience roared with cheers and Rafael stood there, tears welling in his own eyes. Amanda leaned toward her microphone. Rafael, that was absolutely beautiful. You're living proof that sometimes, the most broken instruments make the most beautiful music. Alicia smiled through tears. You've just reminded the world that talent isn't about perfection, it's about heart, and yours is pure gold. Bruno clapped loudly, shouting, Bravo! That's what music is all about. Then Simon looked at him again. You said you came from the Philippines, yes? Yes, sir, Rafael answered softly. Simon nodded. Then I hope everyone watching tonight remembers this, greatness can come from anywhere. Even from a little boy with a broken guitar. The crowd exploded again, and Simon turned toward his fellow judges. I don't even think we need to vote. Amanda pressed her golden buzzer. The moment the gold confetti shot into the air, Rafael gasped. The glitter rained down on him like a miracle, sparkling, swirling, surrounding him as he cried openly, his mother rushing onto the stage. She embraced him tightly as the crowd cheered, and the hosts joined in celebration. Simon stood and applauded again. The camera zoomed in on his face. The tears he quickly wiped away didn't go unnoticed. For a few moments time seemed to stop. The slum boy who once sang for coins on the street now stood in the center of the world's stage, golden light falling around him. Every dream he'd ever whispered suddenly within reach. As the cheering faded, Rafael turned toward the judges' table, his voice trembling. Thank you for listening to me. Simon smiled. No, Rafael, thank you for reminding us how powerful one song can be. Backstage, as Rafael and his mother held each other, overwhelmed and crying, the host asked him how he felt. He took a shaky breath and said, I'm just thankful. I didn't think anyone would ever listen to my song. But now maybe more kids like me will believe they can dream too. Outside the studio, night had fallen over London. The city lights reflected in Rafael's eyes as they walked to their car. He carried his guitar tightly, its old tape now glinting gold from confetti. His mother whispered, see Anak, you didn't just sing for them. You sang for every child who thinks the world forgot about them. Rafael smiled through tears. Mama, I think the world heard us tonight, and indeed, it had. That performance would go on to be watched by hundreds of millions, across every corner of the globe. People wouldn't just remember his voice. They'd remember his heart. The boy with the broken guitar had just healed millions. The world woke up to a new name on everyone's lips, Rafael, the poor Filipino boy who had just stunned the judges on Britain's Got Talent. Clips of his performance flooded every social media feed. News anchors spoke about him with trembling voices, celebrities shared his story, and millions of comments poured in. It wasn't just his voice people were talking about. It was his heart. That child didn't just sing. One American viewer wrote, he made me believe in goodness again. Simon cried, but I cried harder. Another said, he's not just a singer, he's hope. Within hours, Rafael's audition became one of the most viewed performances in Britain's Got Talent history. The video reached 100 million views in a week, and somewhere across the world, in a crowded neighborhood in Manila, people gathered around every TV set and phone screen they could find. Back home, a nation watches in tears. It was nighttime in the Philippines. The narrow streets glowed with flickering lights as families huddled around small televisions. Even those who didn't have one crowded in front of sari stores that had set up screens for everyone to see. When Rafael appeared on stage and sang Silence Fell, mothers wiped their eyes, fathers nodded with pride, children stared in awe, and when the golden confetti rained down, the entire neighborhood erupted in cheers. Firecrackers went off, people clapped, hugged, and shouted his name into the air. Rafael! That's our boy. Inside their tiny home, Aling Maria, Rafael's mother, fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Lord, she whispered, thank you for this miracle. Thank you for showing the world my son's heart. Her neighbors surrounded her, embracing her with love. They knew her struggles, the nights she sold vegetables until midnight, the times she skipped meals so Rafael could eat, the years she never gave up on him. And now the whole world was witnessing the light that had always been there. The ripple effect soon. The news spread far beyond entertainment. International charities reached out, wanting to support Rafael's family and others living in poverty in his community. Donations flooded in, not just money, but instruments, books, school supplies, and letters from children across the world. A letter from a young boy in Texas read, Dear Rafael, I saw you sing. I don't understand everything you said, but I felt it. You made me want to be kind. Rafael read every letter he could, his eyes brimming with tears. Mama, he whispered. They're writing to me like I'm someone important, but I'm still just me. His mother smiled, touching his cheek. Yes, Anak. But now you're showing them what it means to stay humble. That's the most important thing. The return home. When Rafael finally returned to the Philippines, the airport was overflowing with people waiting to welcome him. Reporters, fans, and neighbors waved banners that read, Welcome home, our golden boy. He stepped off the plane, clutching his guitar. the same broken one that had taken him to the world's biggest stage. His mother walked beside him, tears of pride shining in her eyes. A reporter pushed a microphone toward him. "Raphael, how does it feel to be back home?" Raphael smiled shyly. "It feels like a dream, but the best part is being home again. This is where I learned everything. How to sing, how to hope, how to believe." As he spoke, children from his neighborhood ran toward him, hugging him tightly. "Kuya Raphael!" they shouted, laughing and crying all at once. He knelt down and handed one of them his guitar pick. "Here," he said softly. "Never stop dreaming, okay?" The promise that night. As the crowd dispersed, Raphael sat on the same step where his journey had begun. The same cracked concrete, the same flickering streetlights, the same hum of the city. Only now he wasn't singing alone. Behind him stood dozens of children, holding borrowed guitars, tambourines and makeshift drums. A local teacher had organized them, inspired by Raphael's story. "Would you sing for us, Koya?" one of the kids asked. Raphael smiled. "No," he said gently, "let's sing together." He began to play the chords of "You Raise Me Up," and soon, their voices joined his, rough, imperfect, but filled with life. The sound floated through the night like a prayer of gratitude. As they sang, Raphael looked at his mother standing by the door, her hands clasped, eyes glistening. For the first time, he understood something deeper. Fame wasn't his blessing, purpose was. And so, with the help of donations and volunteers, he decided to build something that would outlast applause. The Little School of Hope. Months later, construction began on a small music center right in the heart of the slums. It wasn't fancy, just 2 rooms with painted walls and a tin roof, but to Raphael, it was everything. He called it, the Little School of Hope. It became a sanctuary for children who couldn't afford instruments or lessons. Raphael spent his afternoons there teaching, sometimes guitar, sometimes singing, but always about courage. He'd tell them, music isn't about being perfect, it's about being honest. When you sing, tell your story. Someone out there needs to hear it. The first time the school opened, dozens of children showed up barefoot, carrying notebooks and smiles. Raphael led them in a song. His old guitar, still scarred and taped, hung proudly on the wall, a symbol of how something broken could still create beauty. The message heard around the world. Raphael's story continued to inspire millions. News outlets called him the boy who taught the world to listen. But when people asked about his success, he always said the same thing: "I didn't do this alone. God lifted me. And now, it's my turn to lift others." He was invited to perform at charity concerts, schools, and international events. Yet no matter how grand the stage, he always carried that same humble energy, the same fire that once burned in the alleyways of Manila. One evening, while performing at a children's hospital in London, he was asked by a little girl in a wheelchair, "Raphael, what made you sing even when you were sad?" He knelt beside her and smiled softly. "Because even when life is hard, music reminds me that hope is still alive. Sometimes that's all we need. One song, one dream, one heartbeat that doesn't give up." The audience wept. The world's heartbeat. Years later, people would say that Raphael didn't just win hearts, he changed them. His school expanded, more children found their voices, and his old video continued to inspire countless dreamers across the world. But for Raphael, the greatest victory was not the fame or recognition. It was the sound of laughter and music echoing from the same streets where he once sang alone. And every time he passed by the church where he had once prayed, he would pause, bow his head, and whisper, "Thank you, Lord, for using my voice to make others believe." The Manila sky was painted gold and orange, the kind of sunset that made the whole city glow. From the narrow alleys of the slum, now cleaner and brighter than before, came the sound of laughter. Children chasing each other, their footsteps light on the new cement paths that had replaced muddy puddles. The smell of home-cooked rice drifted through open windows, mixing with the salty air from the nearby bay. On a rooftop at the edge of the neighborhood sat Raphael, now 19. His hair was a little longer, his shoulders broader, but his eyes still carried that same spark, a quiet fire born from years of hunger, hope and song. Beside him rested the same old guitar, repaired so many times it looked more like a patchwork of stories than an instrument. Its strings had been changed, its wood revarnished, but Raphael refused to replace it. It was his first companion, his first teacher, his first dream. He strummed a few chords softly, letting the notes float into the evening air. Down below, the children from his music school, now a small building painted in bright blues and yellows, were finishing their daily lessons. Their voices echoed as they sang, "You Raise Me Up," the very song that had once lifted him from the streets to the world's biggest stage. Hearing them, Raphael smiled. He had taught them that song not because it made him famous, but because it reminded him of where strength truly came from, not fame, but love. From the doorway of a small house nearby, his mother, Lisa, watched with tears glistening in her eyes. Her hair had more gray now, and her hands were rough from years of work, but her face was peaceful. She no longer worried about where their next meal would come from. Her son had not only changed their life, he had changed the lives of everyone around them. "Rafa, she called softly, walking up the narrow stairs to the roof. "You're still playing that old guitar." He laughed. "Always, Mama. This guitar's been through more than I have." She sat beside him, resting her hand on his shoulder. "You've given so much. Anak, the school, the scholarships, the new homes. You could've bought yourself a big house, a fancy car." Raphael's smile was gentle. "I already have what I need. I have you. I have them." He nodded toward the children below. "When I was their age, I didn't have anyone to teach me. I want them to believe that their voice matters. Even if the world tells them it doesn't." His mother looked at him, pride swelling in her chest. "Your father would have been proud," she whispered. For a moment, they sat in silence, listening to the music from below. Then one of the younger kids, a boy about 9 years old, barefoot and bright-eyed, climbed the stairs to the roof, clutching a small ukulele. "Kuya Rafa," he shouted, "can you teach me that song, the one that made Simon Cowell cry?" Rafael chuckled, gesturing for the boy to sit. "Of course, Jun, but remember, it's not about making people cry, it's about making them feel." He adjusted the boy's fingers on the strings. "Like this, softly, let the sound come from your heart, not your hands." Jun tried, plucking the notes carefully. The sound was imperfect but full of sincerity, and Raphael's face lit up with the kind of joy that fame could never give. As they played together, more children gathered around, their small hands clapping to the rhythm. The melody rose higher, carried by laughter and the orange breeze. Even the neighbors leaned out of their windows, watching, smiling. Then someone began to film, not with professional cameras this time but with an old phone. A local volunteer wanted to capture the moment for the community's page. Raphael didn't mind. He'd learned long ago that the best moments weren't staged. When the song ended, the children cheered. Raphael looked around at their faces, faces that once carried hunger and fear. He felt a lump rise in his throat. He stood up slowly, the setting sun behind him, and looked into the camera that someone was holding. "I used to sing to survive," he said softly, his voice steady yet full of emotion. "Now I sing so others can live." The children fell silent, taking in the weight of his words. Then, as if the world itself wanted to answer, the entire community began to hum the tune together, the same melody that had once made Simon Cowell cry, the same song that had lifted a poor Filipino boy from the slums into the hearts of millions. As night settled in, Raphael stayed on the rooftop long after everyone had gone home. The stars began to appear, tiny pinpricks of light against the deep blue sky. He thought about that night in London. The bright stage lights, the standing ovation, Simon's trembling voice. It all felt like a dream now. But what mattered most wasn't the applause. It was this, the laughter of children, the sound of music filling the air, the peace that came from giving back. Down below, the mural on the wall of the music school shimmered in the dim light. It was a painting of Raphael as a young boy, barefoot with his old guitar, surrounded by a circle of stars. Underneath were the words, "Hope can be born in the poorest places, if only we listen." Raphael smiled as he looked at it. "That's what the gentle flame is," he murmured to himself. "A small light in the dark, but it spreads." He picked up his guitar one last time and began to play a new tune, something soft, slow, and full of gratitude. The melody floated into the night, carrying with it the spirit of every hardship he had endured, every hand that had helped him, every dream he now passed on to others. When he finished, he whispered a quiet prayer. "For the ones who still sing in the dark, may they find their light." The camera slowly panned upward, capturing the view of the glowing neighborhood below, the music school filled with laughter, and Raphael standing on the rooftop under the stars. The boy who once sang to survive, now the man who taught a nation to hope. Fade out. The gentle flame logo appears softly against the starlit sky, with the words, "No one is too poor to give hope, and no dream is too small to change the world."